After watching the following entries, you'll likely wonder how on earth you managed to get through everything from iconic, scary sci-fi stories to creepy supernatural pictures without noticing a number of quite obvious blunders. Now, to be honest, you were likely just too busy understandably looking at another part of the screen, or being freaked out by the film in question to see the hilarious or embarrassing rubber, continuity, or other filming errors staring you right in the face. So with all that said, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 obvious horror movie goofs we can't believe we missed the first time. Number 10, some clear light assistance, Doom. Before he was the absolute megastar seen wearing pretty much the same outfit in every single movie that he appears in, and leading many a successful blockbuster, Dwayne Johnson found himself starring in the dud that was 2005's big screen adaptation of the horror sci-fi video game Doom. While largely being a bit of a disappointment, there's still a bit of fun to be had in this demonic ride. The pulsating first-person shooter sequence in Andrzej Bartkowiak's movie is an absolute blast, and that is the pronunciation of that director's name I'm going with. And the autopsy moments are also wonderfully gruesome as Rosamund Pike's Dr. Samantha Grimm cuts away at a creature. It's during one of those latter scenes when viewers' eyes are locked on Sam getting stuck into a carcass that something quite hilarious goes down. To the right of the screen, as the lights flicker mid-autopsy, you can actually see a member of the crew literally lending a hand by turning a switch on and off. Yep, there it is. The camera pans away from the invading arm just quickly enough for the assistance to be missed during a first viewing, but if you choose to revisit this flop of a mission to Mars, and pull your eyes away from the surgical procedure for just a second, it's just about impossible to miss a silly, though rather helpful, goof that likely should have been blown to pieces long before it made it to screens. Number 9, the Predator clearly has rubber claws, Predator. Keeping in the sci-fi horror arena for this next entry, the far more beloved John McTiernan classic that is Predator will always be a glorious 107 minutes well spent. Boasting a stellar ensemble cast led by the iconic Arnold Schwarzenegger as Major Alan Dutch Schaefer, these Marines ultimately come up against the terrifying killing machine that is the titular alien creature. But even a deadly monster like the Yautja can be hurt, folks. And it's during a moment when the spine-ripping nasty tends to one of its wounds, when an often overlooked production gaff rears its head. Despite the terrific suit worn by Kevin Peter Hall being detailed enough to fool you into believing you were actually watching a sharp-clawed hunter treat its damaged leg hair, there is just no hiding the fact that said nails were anything but the real deal. Said very much rubber claws comically bend as the Predator sorts itself out in this scene, briefly but clearly killing the illusion of its mighty paws being equipped with some stiff, spiky fingernails. But who really needs sharp claws anyway when you can just slice your enemies in two with some wrist blades, right? Number 8, that container just did not want to stay closed, Alien Covenant. Continuity can be a tough one to keep an eye on when a scene requires actors to handle a few different objects and a number of different shots. And that was certainly the case during the scene when Karine Oram hands Ledward a container on the uncharted planet in Ridley Scott's frightening sci-fi sequel Alien Covenant. As she passes the pot over to Ledward, the lid is clearly pressed down by Oram. But then as the shot changes, the lid is then miraculously open again before being shut once again. This little guy just did not want to play ball, did he? This was clearly little more than a blatant continuity snafu, and one that was likely missed by many initially as it comes and goes in the space of only a few seconds. But once you know where to look, it sticks out like a baby xenomorph poking out of a chest. Now, there's been a lot of horrifying moments in the Alien franchise over the years, but what do you think is the most horrifying moment in a sci-fi horror movie of all time? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 7, a crew member helped the Christmas tree attack, Gremlins. Another instance of a helpful crew member unintentionally getting some screen time, one of the many Gremlin attacks to go down in Joe Dante's 1984 horror comedy treat that is Gremlins, contains a pretty glaring accidental cameo. However, this silly goof is still quite easy to miss amid all the chaos that unfolds when Billy's mom, Lynn, is ambushed by a gremlin in a Christmas tree. Instead of focusing on the glowing red eyes present in that festive tree though, Look to the left of them and you'll actually be able to spot a human being stood behind the tinsel and decorations. Said red shirt wearing member of the crew then proceeds to hilariously shake the tree and assist in hurling it onto Francis Lee McCain as the gremlin tries to bite a chunk out of Lynn. Would it really have been too difficult to wear a less noticeable colour than red in this moment? Or even just stand a little further around the tree to avoid being caught by the camera? Apparently so. Someone definitely ended up on the naughty list for this blunder that you'll never be able to unsee during a rewatch. Number 6. George Clooney's changing vest from dusk till dawn. Few will ever forget the utterly shocking moment things took an unexpected turn in Robert Rodriguez's action horror cult favourite From Dusk Till Dawn. And it's the absolute madness that follows Salma Hayek and many of the other personnel within a saloon being surprisingly revealed as blood-sucking vampires, which helped disguise the fact one character's costume oddly changed for a second or two there. You see, as George Clooney, Seth Gecko, looks to exact revenge on Hayek's Santanico Pandemonium for killing his brother, you'll notice that his vest is very clearly white when he fires a shot at her. However, as he crashes down to the ground after being whacked by the beautiful creature, said vest suddenly transforms from white to black. Rather than Seth being hit so hard that his wardrobe briefly changed colours though, it seems the person in charge of continuity for this scene somehow did not clock that Clooney's tank top had been white throughout much of the picture. Or maybe they just ran out of this item of clothing while shooting, and just hoped that no one would notice the obvious continuity goof in the middle of the quite hectic fight scene. The vest would soon return to being white, though it would end up getting a little soaked in the red stuff after battling against the reptilian beasts. Still wasn't black though. Cheers for checking out this list today, you horror-loving legend you. Now hit that subscribe button down below and you will get more of these What Culture horror videos in your freaky life. Number 5. Hatchet marks before any chopping. The Conjuring 2. James Wan's The Conjuring 2 is the kind of movie that rewards viewers for paying close attention to everything they see on screen. For example, the letters of the demon Valak's name could be found on the bookshelf next to Lorraine in one scene, before the Warrens learn of its name in the sequel. But those really keeping an eye on each and every detail in this supernatural follow-up were also treated to a pretty strange error towards the end of the film. After Ed Warren finds his way into the Hodgson home, the door he enters through is suddenly slammed shut behind him. With Lorraine unable to follow her husband into the house, Vic Nottingham soon turns up to chop through the door with a hatchet. Only, if you look closely as Vic starts a swinging, there's already a few chop marks in the wood. What gives? It's most likely that this was a case of the scene taking a few takes to get in the can, and there being only one door to hack away at on set. And while this already chopped door certainly doesn't make the sequence any less stressful as the Warrens try to save Janet from the demon, and was easy to miss during your first watch of the spooky movie, this mistake will now stick out like a few jagged splinters if you opt to revisit it, so you are welcome. Number 4. A person in the mirror, Jacob's Ladder. Returning to those times when a crew member very nearly added an unexpected IMDb credit to their CV, Adrian Lyne directed horror mystery picture Jacob's Ladder contains one of the creepier background mistakes. There's a point there in the movie when we see Jacob Singer, a Vietnam veteran suffering from PTSD and experiencing hallucinations and flashbacks, interacting with his deceased son Gabe in his bedroom in another reality. And for a brief moment, something appears in the mirror in that room, which will make you question if you're losing your own mind. As Jacob kisses his boy on the head before singing a tune and telling him and his brothers to get some sleep, a shadowy figure can be seen lurking in that mirror. Instead of being some supernatural presence tormenting Jacob within his mind though, it looks like this was simply someone working on the film who thought they'd be out of shot when Tim Robbins leant forward. But they were not, of course, and it's now a quite clear goof that has been pointed out by a number of fans online in the years since this mind-bending tale was released in 1990. Number 3. Disappearing Blood Blade. As this list has already shown, one thing you can always count on in a movie about blood-sucking beings is the sight of a ton of plasma. And a quite evident continuity goof apparently. That was precisely what occurred during the classic 1998 Stephen Norrington directed action horror ride that was Wesley Snipes' first appearance as Blade, with the aforementioned blood being at the center of a mistake that surprisingly hasn't been found by all that many viewers, even after many a glorious watch. In the scene when Deacon Frost takes Pureblood Dragonetti, the leader of the House of Erebus, onto a beach and pours out his fangs just before sunrise. That act actually comes with a pretty glaring error. There's clearly blood pouring out of Dragonetti's mouth soon after he's had his first tooth yanked out. But when the scene cuts to the part when the next one is pulled, his chin is weirdly clean. Even with this being a relatively quick moment, it's still obvious that the blood just disappears for a bit before returning later on. And again, someone just not keeping an eye on the scene's continuity, or the running out of fake red stuff on the day likely contributed to this inconsistency making its way onto the screen. Whatever the reason, the end result is still the same, vanishing bodily fluid that will now be impossible to unsee. Number 2, a switching limp bone tomahawk. One of the most brutal horror pictures you will ever experience. Bone Tomahawk is certainly not a film for the faint-hearted, and with many folks likely finding themselves understandably squirming behind a pillow or their own leg throughout S. Craig Zala's horrific western, those same viewers probably completely missed a pretty obvious goof. Arthur O'Dwyer, a man trying to save his wife from cannibals, is seen hobbling around on an injured right leg in the film, often using a crutch. However, for one moment, a miracle occurs. Arthur's right leg suddenly heals, as he, his wife, and Deputy Shikari manage to escape the troglodytes. Rather than incredibly making a complete recovery in no time, though, his left leg is now the one he's struggling to use. Wait, what? As one viewer on Reddit pointed out, this strange leg swap mistake may just be the result of the scene being flipped, possibly because the sight of the characters just wandering off in the same direction to the right for back-to-back shots just didn't look as interesting as having them move in different directions as they trudged across the land. Now that would explain the odd injured limb change at least, but it still doesn't stop it seeming like a bit of a goof in the film itself. And number 1, a bendy shovel. Secret window. Sometimes the difference between a scene being one that sends chills up your spine or unintentionally leaves you chuckling can be something as simple as the material a prop is made out of. That was certainly the case during the horror thriller known as Secret Window. In this Stephen King adaptation directed by Jurassic Park screenwriter David Coep and starring Johnny Depp, the latter's character of Mort Rainey, a writer of mystery novels, ends up colliding with an odd bloke by the name of John Shooter. Shooter, played by John Turturro, claims that Mort has plagiarized his own short story, and he is not happy about it. In fact, at one point, when the two clash outside of Mort's cabin, Shooter even goes as far as to pin his enemy up against a tree with a shovel, one that had just been swung at him by said adversary. It's a quite intense scene, right up until your eyes hone in on the handle of that tool. In order to ensure the safety of the actors, a rubber shovel has evidently been used here. Now yes, making sure everyone involved isn't at risk of injury is obviously vitally important when shooting this sort of physical moment, but making the intimidating act itself look somewhat real is also quite crucial, and using such a bendy material for the prop shovel did anything but that. It's the sort of mistake that is hidden in plain sight, staring you right in the face in the middle of the damn frame, but one that many justifiably missed after being thoroughly distracted by an A-lister squirming against a tree.